The Chimera class began development at the Utopia Planitia Fleet Yards in 2405 as Project Lotus. As tensions with the Klingon Empire had boiled over to the point of war that same year, Starfleet wanted a mid-sized starship maneuverable enough to engage in combat with raiding Klingon birds of prey, while also being able to hold its own against larger battlecruisers like the Negvar class. Project Lotus aimed to design a vessel around a new technology blandly named the Dynamic Tactical System, a weapon system designed for targeting multiple enemy starships and dealing massive damage all at once. One of the major contributors to Project Lotus was Commander Nog, the first Ferengi to join Starfleet and a veteran of the Dominion War, following his tour as Chief Engineer of the Enterprise E. The prototype USS Chimera, NX 97400, would launch in 2407 under the command of newly promoted Captain Nog. Chimera and her sister ships would quickly be deployed into the war with the Klingons. Unfortunately, mass production of the class would be hindered due to the complexity of the Dynamic Tactical System. The Dynamic Tactical System allowed the Chimera-class starships to reconfigure between two different modes, Regenerative Mode and Tactical Mode. In Regenerative Mode, which also functioned as the ship's standard configuration, excess power was routed to the ship's shield and auxiliary systems, and enabled the Chimera to utilize a tachyon inversion beam that could siphon off enemy shield energy from multiple ships simultaneously. In Tactical Mode, that excess power was transferred to the Chimera's weapon systems, and the ship reconfigured to enable the use of massive Nadion focusing arrays mounted within the saucer section, which were capable of firing quick, heavy bursts of phaser energy at several targets at once. In 2409, Chimera assisted a ship crewed mostly by cadets on a training cruise under the command of Mask Taggart, who had been captured when the ship was attacked by a Borg sphere. The two ships would also be joined by Admiral Janeway aboard the USS Voyager, and together they would fight off the Borg vessel. The three ships then responded to a distress call from the USS Chimera in the Pollux system, where it was investigating radiation anomalies that turned out to be hiding a Borg fleet on their way to the Vega system. Chimera and Voyager defended the Chimera from additional Borg assault while the cadet ship went to warn the Vega colony, but later joined a Starfleet battlegroup to fight off the Borg at Vega. Later that year, Chimera was part of a Starfleet task force assigned to clear out Romulan Star Empire forces from an asteroid mining facility that had been attacking Romulan civilians not part of the Star Empire. In 2410, during the Iconian War, the Chimera assisted in forming an alliance between what would become the Chimera Alliance and the Krenim Imperium after securing an artifact of theirs from a Ferengi trader named Quen on Drazana Station, a transaction that was made far simpler with Nog's presence due to him being the son of Grand Nagus Rom.
Dandy. That's what I thought. Now, kiss the staff.
With this artifact, Chimera and another ship were able to locate and contact the Krenim colony in the Kiana system, while also fighting off Iconian forces. Nog and the Chimera's crew would continue working with the Krenim to get their temporal weapon ship online, and also in figuring out how best to deploy it against the Iconians. Chimera was present at the Battle at Midnight, the final confrontation against the Iconians above Earth, where the Chimera Alliance forces held off the Iconians while the Krenim time ship opened up a temporal vortex to send 3 ships back in time to the destruction of Iconia. The mission was to go back in time and prevent Iconian survivors from escaping their homeworld's destruction. A plan that changed when it was discovered that the Iconians were originally peaceful. The conflict was resolved by returning the Iconian World Heart. Following the Iconian War, a number of Chimera-class ships would be refitted to the newly developed Manticore class, a flagship subclass refit for the Chimera class equipped with sector-wide command and control capabilities. The Manticore was meant to fill an important niche role of being able to establish fast, powerful command posts in remote systems whose connection to the majority of the Federation had been severed by the destruction caused by the war. Its armaments were very similar to the original Chimera class and still featured its signature dynamic tactical system. However, the Manticore would lose some maneuverability at impulse speeds due to the addition of a large dorsal-mounted pod section that would house the new command and control systems. Powering these new systems also proved to be a bit of a challenge. The idea of adding a second warp core was thrown around, but because of the complications of such an addition on top of the already complex dynamic tactical system, the idea was soon dismissed. Instead, it was decided to swap out the existing impulse drive to utilize the fusion reactors that powered it to instead power the new command and control systems. The saucer-mounted impulse engines were removed entirely, while the pylon-mounted engines were replaced with larger units that tapped directly into the ship's EPS power grid. USS Chimera would not receive this refit, however, due to the relatively light damage she received at the Battle at Midnight, and would maintain her current role as a heavy destroyer. Later that year, Captain Nog and the Chimera would be present at the Battle of Impersa, assisting in the defense of the Dominion and the changeling homeworld from the attacking Herc. Following the conflict with the Herc, the Chimera would remain in the Gamma Quadrant as part of a joint peacekeeping task force. Now, the thing about a lot of this lore is that it was written for Star Trek Online several years ago, and the thing about a lot of Star Trek Online's lore is that it's been rendered non-canon by a lot of the canon established in Star Trek Picard. Fortunately, most of Chimera's stories doesn't start until 2405, so it's pretty easy to fit it into existing canon. They can move Project Lotus's development date to sometime between 2385 and 2399, so it would be in line with the launching of the Odyssey class and several of the other Star Trek Online originals that made it into Picard. While in Star Trek Online, Chimera was developed in response to the Klingon War, Star Trek Picard has made no reference to any sort of conflict with the Klingons. However, you could just change it to say that the Chimera was developed in response to the synth attack on Utopia Planitia, and then keep the Manticore refit going into development after the Iconian War. The original lore also states that the Chimera class was developed at the Utopia Planitia fleet yards, which obviously wouldn't be possible because it was destroyed by the synths in Star Trek Picard, but you could just move that to any other shipyard, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. You'd also have to change up Nog's story a little bit, because in the original war, before going to Project Lotus, he was the chief engineer of the Enterprise E under Captain Data, and then was promoted to captain after the project was complete and placed in command of the first Chimera. But if Chimera is launching sometime in the late 2380s, it's a bit early for Nog to be making captain at that point. So it may have to have been changed to that he wasn't the first captain of the Chimera, but did eventually become captain of it. There's also Nog's time as the chief engineer of the Enterprise E under Captain Data, which that's not possible in existing lore because Data was dead at the time. Instead, it was Worf who was in command of the Enterprise E during this time period, and that actually makes even more sense for Nog to be his chief engineer rather than Data's, given the time they spent serving together on Deep Space Nine and the Defiant during the Dominion War. The ship that would become the Chimera class was designed by artist Jason Lee and was created as his submission to Star Trek Online's Design the Next Enterprise competition, a contest held by Cryptic Studios and CBS where fans could submit their own designs in the hopes of theirs becoming the Enterprise F. While Lee's submission, which he had named the Magellanic class, didn't win, he was a runner-up in the contest, and his design was later used as a reward in Star Trek Online's old Veteran Reward system, now only accessible via the game's lifetime subscription. The transforming mechanic wasn't part of Lee's original concept, but was added by the Star Trek Online development team at Cryptic Studios, and was tasked to Star Trek Online artist Adam Gibson. Since the ship was meant to be a special reward, they wanted it to fit multiple playstyles, which is where they got the idea for the ship to have different modes. In 2023, Jason Lee would return to his original creation to remaster the Chimera class for Star Trek Online, as the game was releasing updated skins for both it and the Manticore class, the Manticore having been remastered by Star Trek Online art director Thomas Moroni.